Kakadosh Boker Tov Shavua Tov. We're just going to continue with the halachot now. We are in Siman Shin Vav to do with Sechar Shabbat. We spoke about it a little bit yesterday, but I wanted to give you a summary of all the halachot that we were speaking about. We know that it is prohibited to receive reward for the Shabbat because of Mekach Umemka, which means I cannot receive payment for Shabbat. Now, obviously, here we're talking about something which was permitted for me to do on Shabbat. So, for example, a waiter's job, that there's no isur entailed in doing that, or even a cleaning job, as long as you're not doing any really isur of squeezing or things like that, washing the dishes, taking out the things, taking out the garbage, or just cleaning up afterwards. All those things. Now, another things, it could be babysitting. It could be many other things which have to do with Sechar Shabbat. Sechar Shabbat means payment for doing something on Shabbat. So it is prohibited to accept it. The prohibition is on the payer, according to the majority of opinions, which means that the one that's receiving it, right, is the one that has the prohibition, not on the one that's paying it. So, for example, if right now I'm going to give you the money and you are receiving Sechar Shabbat, technically I did not transgress any avirah of paying you Sechar Shabbat other than lifnei velot teming shol, which means I gave you a stumbling block. But on me, I have no problem, because the isur is to receive money on Shabbat as a payment. It's not for the paying it. Therefore, one of the ramifications is a goy. If right now there's an isur for me to pay money for working on Shabbat, so I cannot give money to a goy that's working for me on Shabbat, a cleaner, a waiter that's coming to work, I cannot pay them. But if you're going to tell me that the isur is on the one that's getting paid, a goy is allowed to get paid on Shabbat. He has no isur of getting paid on Shabbat. So therefore, we're allowed to come and pay, whether it's our cleaner or whether it's our worker on Shabbat. Again, working for things which are permitted on Shabbat, not things which are prohibited. There's no isur. Why? Because it is on the one that's receiving the money. Now, from here, we have a few different cases, and now we go into the halachot. Okay, so then one second. Let's try to find out how exactly is it permitted or prohibited. So we'll go through a list of a few different cases. Number one, babysitting. So a babysitter, how right now you took a babysitter for your child and it's Shabbat, how do you pay them for the Shabbat? If they're Jewish, you're right, they're not doing anything prohibited on Shabbat, they're watching a child. There's no prohibition in watching a child, but how do they get paid for that? So we're going to go through the different ways of heterim that there's no problem whatsoever of accepting money for the Shabbat. Number one is called havla'ah. Havla'ah is that I'm absorbing it during the weekday. So I'm not paying you specifically for the Shabbat, I'm paying you as a whole, as an entire group. And therefore, they cannot demand the money for the Shabbat, but it's as a whole. It's true, if you're doing it that way and they're not going to work on the Shabbat, I could deduct the money of the Shabbat, but it's not that I'm paying them for the Shabbat. So for example, I want to get somebody to watch my children on Shabbat, so I tell them from the beginning, and it has to be at the time of actually doing the contract, or meaning getting them to work for you, you tell them, I want you to work for me on this Shabbat and on Wednesday night, right? Or on Sunday night, or a weeknight. It doesn't matter when it is. Now, since at the time of taking them, right, on the job, they already know that they have two jobs, one during the week and one on Shabbat. So now what happens is that it is permitted to do that, because it's called havla, it's absorbed inside of it. So therefore, when I come and I pay them, I'm not going to tell them, this is for Shabbat and this is for Wednesday night. I come and tell them, this is for your babysitting job. And they're both absorbed in the same thing. Another thing is havla'ah, but it's in hotzaot. It's in the actual usage or rental of certain items. So for example, they use this case for tevilah in a mikveh. Right now, if a person wanted to go to do tevilah in the mikveh, right, it's Shabbat morning. Obviously, you're not going to pay on the Shabbat. You have to pay, you usually prepay it. Now you go here and you want to use the mikveh. Now the thing is, one second, if you're only going on Shabbat, you're not going during the weekday, how are you going to pay the money, all right, on the Shabbat? So one of the ways that is havla'ah behotzaot, which means it costs them money to warm up the mikveh, or for the towels, for the cleaning of the towels, or for the soap. In all of those things, when they're charging you whatever it is, the $4 or whatever it is that you go, right, to the mikveh, when they're charging you that amount of money, so therefore what happens is that money is also included there, the usage of the towels or the heating up of the mikveh, and therefore in such a case, it is havla'ah, but it's not havla'ah in days, because you're not going during the week, but it's havla'ah, it's absorption in the costs of the running costs, and therefore it's going to be permitted. A third heter is going to be called for tzorech mitzvah. Tzorech mitzvah is going to be, for example, a chazan, a bal koreh, or a bal tokea, the one that does skiyat shofar. In all these cases, he's doing it for a mitzvah. So for a mitzvah, there's a machloket in the Shulchan Aruch, but he's posek at the end that you're allowed to receive schar Shabbat. You're allowed to receive wages for the Shabbat, for doing Bal Tokea or Chazan or all those things. However, though, says Maran, Eno ro'eh siman bracha. He does not see a bracha in it, which means he's permitted to receive the money, but he doesn't see a siman bracha. So another way of getting out of that is for example, preparation. Right? It usually doesn't happen by a chazan, or maybe a Bal Tokea does, maybe it doesn't. But for sure that, for example, a Bal Koreh, he's obligated to prepare beforehand. So therefore, since he's obligated to prepare beforehand, so the preparation that he's doing during the week, you're also paying him for that preparation. And therefore, since that preparation in itself involved, whether it's minimum that he has to prepare 2 times, 3 times, even 4 times, there's machlokot there if you look in the Mishabra, in Hilchot Kriyat Torah, there's differences of opinions, how many times does he have to actually prepare. However, though, for sure that when the Bal Koreh is preparing, that preparation that is done during the weekday, you're also doing it because that's also for the privilege, which is also a form of havla'ah. So therefore, what happens now is that when we get back, now we're going to go through the cases very simple. A babysitter, you could do it b'havla'ah. How do you do it b'havla'ah? You tell her, I want you to work for me on Shabbat and a Wednesday. If she has to prepare a program or she has to prepare something for the children, so then you could do it havla'ah in the hotzaot. She has to buy things, whether it's candies, whether it's other things as well, and now all of a sudden she's coming and it's only going to be on the Shabbat. You're doing it as a preparation, as a whole. So that would be a heter over there. Other cases, you do have tzorech mitzvah. Usually a babysitter, you don't have a tzorech mitzvah, because what mitzvah is there to take care of your children? At the end of the day, it's your obligation to take care of your own children. It's not a mitzvah to hand them over to other people, right? That they should take care of them, right? That's doing chesed on somebody else's back, as they say. That was in last week's bulletin, if you pay attention. What? Which means, no, the oneg Shabbat is that you're with your children and that the children are enjoying from the Shabbat, not throwing them in a babysitting club. That's not the oneg Shabbat. Right, but again, so therefore it's not tzorech mitzvah. But what do you have tzorech mitzvah? You have whether it's going to be the halachot of Bal Koreh, Chazan, Bal Tokea, even Tevilah b'mikveh. Some people bring down that that's also going to be tzorech mitzvah. Right? It all depends on what the circumstances are. However, though, in all these cases, you're allowed to. The meltzar, which is basically going to be the waiter or the waitress, right? Or also somebody that's cleaning, you also have the havla'ah. It doesn't only have to be during the weekday. It could be Erev Shabbat or Motzei Shabbat. So with this, we'll finish off by saying that, for example, let's say I have a waiter that they're working for me or a cleaner that they're working for me. If they're going to stay after the Shabbat and they're doing a significant job also on Motzei Shabbat or Erev Shabbat, that they had to prepare before Shabbat, they had to come, they had to set up, they had to do all these things. The fact that I'm also paying them for the Erev Shabbat or the Motzei Shabbat, so that also is another way of getting out of paying the Schar Shabbat. This applies a lot, especially in Israel, because in Israel, the majority of the waiters, right, and all these things, many times they're Jews, right? You go to all these party halls and all these things, and a lot of times they're Jews that are serving you, that are the waiters, right? So therefore, in all these things, the person does have to realize how to get out of the problem, because if not, we also have an isur of paying Schar Shabbat because of the Lifnei Ve'Elotem Mishol, or on the receiving end as well, and we also always want to see Siman Bracha. So therefore, we always try to make sure that even if it's going to be a Chazan or a Bal Koreh or Bal Tokea, whatever, they also try to get out of it, so that way they will also see a Bracha in the money that they have, so that way they could continue doing their job, Be'emunah.